everyone. Welcome back to another edition of Spilling the Tea on GovCon. I'm Teresa Moon, Director of Business Development for Parabolis. We provide a better financial partnership for government contractors that includes a line of credit to fund your growth. The purpose of this podcast is to assist small businesses with success in the federal marketplace by introducing them to industry experts and resources that they may not otherwise know about. Today's guests are no strangers to the GovCon world. I'd like to welcome Stephanie and Susy from Boost.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you both. I love it. I'm so glad that you're here. I love the energy, especially Stephanie and I have met in person, and Susy, I'm so glad to connect with you for the first time, but there's a lot of energy here. I think you were a redhead if I hadn't already known that you're not, but the energy is there. We share that.
Or too much caffeine, whichever way, you know, we're at it. We had our coffee and our Wheaties this morning. Let's go.
I love it. I love it. So you're all energized and ready for this. And so I would love it if you both would take a second to personally introduce yourselves, give a little bit of brief overview of the services of Boost, your backgrounds, and what you do for Boost.
Okay, I'll start off. I'm Stephanie Alexander, the founder and CEO of Boost LLC. Boost, because you can't do anything in GovCon without an acronym, actually is Back Office Organizational Support Team, which is just a fancy word. Everything in our world is GovCon. We have actually known all of our clients are GovCon, and we support them in a couple key areas. One of which is accounting, which Susy can tell you all about. But we also support them in contracts, HR, talent acquisition, and strategic pricing. So we know our industry. We speak in acronyms just like everybody else. We're kind of GovCon nerds, and we're actually pretty damn proud of it. So we make no apologies for it.
I love
Susy,
it.
what about you?
Sure. So my name is Susy Vallelonga. I'm the Director of Accounting and CFO Services here at Boost. I've been with Stephanie for about 1.5 years. And just like she mentioned, we specialize in my division, we specialize in accounting. And we provide any of those services from start to finish. So anything that comes across our desk in terms of accounting, we have handled before. And it all goes down to, junior accountant positions all the way to CFO services, strategic pricing. So if it touches accounting, you better believe we do it.
I love it. Now, I am not a stranger to Boost because everyone in the DMV knows the most influential connector of all connectors, Dan Nathan, my buddy. And
shout out to Dan.
That's right. And us business development people don't have any business talking about accounting, even though he's wonderful in every respect. So we're glad to have Susy's expertise here. But I didn't want to neglect my friend who is the reason that I know so much about the wonderful services that you guys provide. He does a great job of circulating what you all do in our community. So I'm excited to get granular about it to a certain extent. And I think we can start it off. I think it's safe to say Happy New Year, right? Indeed, we're at the beginning of the government fiscal year. And
yes, please. Hopefully everybody's got all their contract awards that came in last week, and everybody's now reeling and going, oh gosh, what did we sign up for? So let the fun begin, kids.
Right. It's bustling and we're excited. And it was perfect timing to have you on just for that reason, because I wanted you to be here today so you could talk about some of the tips and best practices for budgeting for the fiscal year. And so I'm going to let you guys kick it off. I've got a couple of questions that I'd like to ask. So feel free to jump in, whoever, wants to take this one. What are some of the up and coming topics any GovCon business should consider as they're budgeting for the 2023 season?
Absolutely. So I think that we have a million of ideas, but I wanted to, when you asked us what topic we should talk about, this is not a sexy topic, right? Like people don't want to talk about budgeting, but my gosh, it is one of the most important things that you can do for your company. This very dramatically influences your bidding rates for next year, your capture strategy, your BD strategy, your retention, how you're going to pay your people, what type of bonuses you're going to give out, what office supplies you're going to need. I mean, it covers the waterfront, which is why it's so important. So Susy and I were kind of talking about, all right, what could we say that was somewhat interesting about budgeting?
Yes.
Okay, it's boring. We know it. But that it's so important, right? Mm-hmm. So Susy, you want to come up with a couple suggestions that you and I had gone back and forth on in terms of like what we're seeing in terms of trends?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the biggest ones we've seen and we've heard a lot of noise on is healthcare cost. So healthcare costs right now, there have been increases already seen through those costs.
Yes.
However, we still believe it's going to continue to rise. There's been, even just noting disaster area impacted items, but also COVID, we're still seeing that the costs have not been to the point where they need to be, unfortunately. And so understanding where that environment is going to in the future is really imperative for your budgeting costs. And it's on the French side of the house. So it's on the benefits, right? It's really important for your people to make sure that they know that they're getting the best type of healthcare costs. And so those are definitely on the rise, unfortunately.
I know. Don't shoot the messenger. We get it. You didn't do it, but we're all feeling the effect of it. So
nobody's costs are going down. And as Susie said, they're going up dramatically, impacts the fringe rate, but then also impacts your retention rate, right?
Yes.
And you're able to recruit people because they want the best benefits and all the other things. So, huge ramifications. Teresa, I'm sure that you have many healthcare providers and brokers within your network, as do we. We always suggest, shopping it out, making sure that you're definitely looking at it every year. You're going through the what if scenarios. You're trying to figure out how much the company is going to pay versus what your employees are going to pay. Another potential option this year is self-funded. So considering a self-funding health insurance plan might give you some cost savings. And there's definitely brokers out there that specialize in this. And we're happy to refer you to some of the people that we know that do a great job, as I'm sure you have them as well. But that's a huge impact on your fringe rate. And it gives you, a lot. It's one of the highest expenses besides salaries.
It definitely is. Yep.
It's horrible. It is. I'm sorry. I'm sitting here thinking about it for us personally, and I'm like, yeah, it's only going up. It stinks.
Well, you're the business owner, so you not only feel the impact of it as the owner of the company, but you're also a leader of people who have lives outside of the business that they do for you, and so that's a compassionate leader right there that's looking at it from all aspects. So I think that's wonderful.
I always want to give more benefits to our employees. I always want to provide more, but there is a cost impact to everything, as you know, and so yeah, this one's a biggie. Yep. Susie, what else do we come up with?
Another one.
You're the smart one here. Go ahead.
I do want to just add a little bit to the healthcare one, because Stephanie, one of the things that you have initiated just throughout Boost internally, which I think is very beneficial for anybody really looking at their budget and their healthcare costs, is to send out a survey to their employees. What really is important to them? And are you spending dollars unnecessarily for some benefit package that they don't even believe it's beneficial to them? So I just wanted to point that out as a good tip.
That's really
great. Important.
Yep. And your HR department should be able to send that out and work with your broker to get out the right questions. So
yes.
And you're right, we just did ours. So
we did too. I cried a little bit.
I know. A little painful.
But I think, Stephanie, you mentioned another really important topic. And, there's a really mix, because we can go through and discuss some cost items that are really coming, like cybersecurity. This one has been in the works and the talks a little bit longer than, healthcare costs that we've seen because of CMMC and, ISO certificate, all of that stuff. But there's still not a concrete direction on it. So how do you budget for cybersecurity? How much of at risk is your small business or medium-sized business or large, GovCon? How have you done an assessment? Have you reviewed? Who are the ones certifying? Like, there's just 1,000,001 questions out there, but it's definitely something to keep an eye out. It will drive costs, and it will drive costs significantly if you don't hire the right people at the right time.
Absolutely. I know a little bit about it, having come from the cyber world, doing business development for a cyber contractor. And I remember it was the worst place to be at the end of the conversation, where it was, why is it costing so much?
And it's like more expensive.
And some people don't realize that just because they're not DoD contractors, they're not the only ones that are going to be having to feet to the fire, have some compliance, upgrades done to their business. And small businesses don't allocate enough for services like this. And cybersecurity is a huge threat to all of us, and let alone, government contractors that are interacting with controlled unclassified information. And so I think that's wonderful that you guys are pointing that out. And I'm sure that you guys can help consult businesses with based off of the type of work that they do and things of that nature of what they should be looking at for that.
Absolutely. We're happy to refer those out. I can barely spell CMMC because it is one of the most painful things ever, but we know that the government's getting serious about it. So if there's any message to small business, it's like, you've got to start budgeting and taking it seriously. Nobody wants to be the company on the front page of the Washington Post for the wrong reason. And that is what's going to start coming. Yeah. So 2023, I believe that compliance is going to become more and more important around cybersecurity. They are not kidding anymore. Your primes are putting it in your, like, it's been in your contract, people. You know it. So now you actually have to do it.
You want to know why we know they're serious? Because all of those people who were signing up to be assessors have actually now been approved and they're ready to rock and roll.
And they're like super proud of it. And they're like, we're now approved. And I'm like, oh crap, the auditors are coming. So if you're in the room, like, the auditors are coming. So get with it.
That's right. Yes. That's right.
And Susie said, I mean, it's a big expense, right? And I'm assuming, Susie, kind of, it's G&A to me.
It's just, to me. I mean, right now the guidance is that it is, right, unless we start to see them being built into the contracts and then we start negotiations with the COs. But I feel that that's a far stretch.
I feel like it's going to be,
So, but yeah, and then, you know, even us outside of CMMC, we deal with a lot of small businesses that are jumping into the GovCon world or have been in the GovCon world for 5 to 10 years, you know, and really didn't focus on the cyber and the security part of their business. And they're rolling out a lot of these newer apps for APIs and, you know, key performance indicators. Let me, you know, use this application in the finance world, or even using an app that does your budgeting and forecasting. But if you don't take a look at the privacy settings or the terms and conditions of those apps, your information is being shared. You don't have the visibility and the security in place because you didn't take the time to hire the right person to look into it before you rolled out all of these applications. So I think it goes beyond that sometimes, where we, you know, our nature is to trust an application just because somebody referred it to us. You know, you need to do your due diligence.
I think it's also, you know, business leaders to a certain extent, because they are so focused on doing the work that they have intended for their business, they try to take too much on themselves. You know, there's a saying, do what you do best and outsource the rest. And that's why we have professionals like you on this podcast, so that people know who they can outsource those types of things to. I mean, that's why it's crucial in the beginning of a fiscal year for us to have businesses like yours that offer a compilation of services that they can come in, and you're nearly a one-stop shop when it comes to the things that you can help with on the back office side of things. So I think it's beautiful that you're highlighting those issues from, you know, internal and to external, right? It's not only just about the work that you're doing for and with the federal government. It's the stuff that you have stored in your computers about your own people that you need to be aware of. So that's great. Thank you for noting that. I think you're right. We trust too quickly. We don't verify enough, and we need to really start applying that across the board. And I don't know if it's always just, we don't know what we don't know. I think a lot of it is people don't want to spend any money. And then they get audited, or their information gets stolen. And then they're like, no, I have to spend 70 times what I would have if I would have just paid attention to begin with. But hey, that's a conversation for another time, right?
Yeah.
As they're trying to find the time in the day to actually achieve all these things. We understand.
Yeah,
that's true.
Susie, what else is important, or what else are you thinking in terms of corporate budgets and what our clients are looking at?
So we talked a little bit about 2 items on the cost structure side, right? But we really need to also focus a little bit on the revenue side, or, you know, what impacts the revenue side of your budget. And right now we're seeing a lot of price adjustments. We're seeing GSA price adjustments. So take advantage of those. We're hearing a lot of buzz on maybe from fixed price contracts, being able to do price adjustments. So not only in your budget and whenever you're planning for your budget in the forecast, you want to make sure that you account for, do you qualify for some of these price adjustments? And absolutely take advantage, because more than likely when you did your price volumes, you did not account for an 8% inflation that we're dealing with now. So that is extremely critical. There's a lot, you know, we have those smaller subprime relationships or JVs that, you know, are really not established, taking into consideration all of this inflation. And so that impacts your revenue. And if there's any chance that you can increase that because your expenses you're already incurring, you're hiring folks at a larger salary, you know, if you're doing any product business, your product and your deliveries are more expensive, services are more expensive. So you want to make sure that you also consider the cost side, cost reductions, make sure that you trim there. But hey, how about your revenue side of the house? Have you considered what options you have out there to increase that line?
Absolutely.
And actually, this is where accounting and contracts work hand in hand together, because you've got to go through and see what's actually viable on the contract. You've got to negotiate with the contracting officer. But if there's an extra dime or two that you can pick up due to all of the things Susy just said, absolutely worth your time to investigate and look into it. Don't leave the money on the table, because you will have higher expenses. I mean, it's just even recruiting. I mean, I think it's another part of a huge part of this conversation is recruiting and the salaries and trying to put the right people on the team and listening or being held to labor category rates from 3 years ago on your third year of your, you know, thing. It's practically impossible right now. And so I think that's a huge challenge that everyone is facing, and recognizing that salaries are usually the base cost for most service companies. And so where are you going to hire, and how are you going to hire, and what rates and what levels? All of that plays into your corporate budget and forecasting going forward. Because the corporate budget is what makes up the things that, what you're going to derive your bonus pool from, what you're going to put your provisional rates in for DCA for, what you're going to start billing out at, what you're going to tell your bankers you're doing for to justify, you know, the line of credit and all the other things. So, I mean, it is so important. But I think what's also important is to go with the flow. So, Susy, in terms of like your recommendations, how often would you tell people to update or to look at those assumptions as you talk about corporate budgets for the year?
Absolutely. So with our clients, we do it monthly. And the reason why we do it monthly is because things have changed so frequently. And you want to make sure that you're being you have accurate projections. So at least for the first quarter, we always try to look at it monthly. How far off are we from our actuals? How did we come in? Where do we need to improve? Where do we need to take a look at? What were these random expenses that we were not counting for in the budget? And then going forward, as the company feels comfortable that they're right on target to their budget, you can do quarterly. So you can do quarterly touch points and cadences. But really being aggressive in terms of the whole point of a budget is you have to utilize it. You can't just set it and you're done. You know, and that unfortunately is one of the things that a lot of small companies just feel like, oh, I checked the box, you know, I'm going to provide this to the bank when I go get capital. No, you need to utilize it, because this is the data that this is the life of your company and where you're headed. And if you're not projecting it and reforecasting it accurately, your rates are going to be completely wrong when you're bidding. And then, oh, snap, now I'm in a bind. Right?
And I'm sure you see, you know, buyers that people are needing you to put out for them because of that very reason. So it's wise to bring that out. You know, I always like to send out, you know, the message of, from especially industry experts like yourselves, from both the expertise level that you bring to the table with your respective, you know, interactions with your clients, but when it comes to where we are now, not only culturally, but from you know, you've mentioned inflation, how that's affecting things across the board, from everything from hiring to benefits to pricing to all kinds of things. And so I'd love it if you guys could give us some, you know, sage wisdom tips and some of your top recommendations for small businesses when they're establishing that budget.
Sure. I'll be happy to start us off there. I think one of the biggest tips is start early. You can always be very late in the game, and you don't want to be that company where you're already late. You're already needing to provide your rates to your, you know, primes, or even bidding on something, and you have no idea where you stand financially. That is probably the worst place you want to be at. However, you know, it could happen. And if it does, keep going, right? But start early really is one of the biggest tips. When is early enough? So every year we always recommend our clients to start at least in September. October is the latest that you want to be spearheading this effort, because it isn't just a top-down approach or a bottoms-up approach. You really do have stakeholders. It's not a one-person show. So depending on the methodology you use for the budget, you just want to make sure that you address the right folks. Do you need to connect with your PMs in terms of revenue? What are the projections? Do you have people that are changing in your projects? Do you have a project closeout that's imminent, right? So it's always really important to start early so that you can mitigate those concerns early on. And even though you are updating your budget monthly, if that's the frequency, you can still account for those items and capture them sooner, so that whenever you're pricing out or you're trying to go for capital, you have the most updated budget.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
I tend to always say be conservative on the capture and BD. So whatever your business development professional tells you, I don't know, half it in terms of what you're putting into the actual budget. I tend to like to be very conservative, especially in the beginning of the year, on what is actually going to hit the books. Given that everything starts shifting and to late contract awards, late ramp up, a protest, all the other stuff, like everything starts shifting. So do not, by all means, just say, well, the government said they were going to award it on Jan 1, so I'm sure we'll start capturing revenue in January.
Right.
That's not actually how this works.
We all know what that looks like. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe that's a March 1 start.
Right.
Just be realistic and add that reality to that capture and BD element of the unknown growth that you are projecting. Again, my former CFO life just tends to be conservative in the beginning. And then you start to kind of, as Susy said, if you're updating monthly and then you're starting to like revisit it on a quarterly basis, you look at it monthly, revisit it quarterly, and then you can start to be a little more, foot on the gas in terms of what you're looking at. The further into the year you get, and the more you get the battle rhythm of what the government's going to be letting out.
I love that. That's great advice. So I know you guys are very active in the community. You attend a lot of conferences, you engage in webinars, presentations, things like that. How about in the months ahead? Where can our listenership find you guys?
Okay. So next week, depending on when this gets released, we've got AUSA down in DC, huge conference. A bajillion of your friends will be there. So very active in DoD. We've got It's Sick in Florida.
In Orlando.
I know, it's in Orlando, right? I always get Orlando or Tampa, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Those are probably the two major conferences that I see on the upcoming horizon. We've got like a lot of great partners are putting out things. Raymond James has an all-day event next week. We know that always has an interesting panel discussion on GovCon. So, there's a lot of things going on. 'Tis the season to have networking events. And before we know it, we're going to start talking about holiday party season time, which is kind of hard for me to believe, but it is October. So be there or be square. There's a lot going on.
That's right. That's awesome. Well, I'm glad to know that you guys will be in Orlando.
Yeah. So lots of places to find us.
Very cool. And we're also scrolling your information down at the bottom. We'll put out your LinkedIn information so people can contact you directly as well. I love it. I'm glad that you guys are as active as you are. So I think it's important for people to meet you in person too. I think that adds to the effect. Your expertise is one thing, but to know that you're good people too, I think is the layer that people are looking for these days in the business relationships. So I'm going to let you guys end our conversation with some final tips, best practices, with some sage wisdom you can give to our listenership.
Susy, you want to go first?
Sure. Just be really cognizant of your financials. I know, in the day-to-day activities, it gets really hard to keep up. And it's really easy to just get into the service delivery side of the house. But being very proactive with your financials, you can definitely succeed and grow your company. And, hopefully you have an exit strategy and that's what you're working towards. Mm-hmm.
I would echo that as well. And I think one of my best advice is to always take time to pause and lift your head and not be so far down in the weeds and deliverables and operational, to actually take the time to think about what your overall strategy is, what your exit strategy is and what this looks like for next year. Like, what do you have that you want to accomplish in 2023, and how can you do it? And what are the resources that you need?
Awesome. I think that's great advice. And I appreciate you both coming from two different perspectives, but in unison in the way that you guys can help each other and help the community that we like to service as well. So thank you so very much for being here and sharing your time and your talent with our network. I am always so excited to learn from the experts we have on this show. And today is one of those really amazing days. So I appreciate you both so very much. I thank you
so much for having us.
Yeah,
absolutely. I hope you're coming back, because we only literally scratched the surface of where we could have gone with today's conversation. So, Susy, great meeting you again. Stephanie, we'll definitely have you back again soon. I thank everyone for being a part of this program and supporting us. If you're watching and you're listening and you know someone who would be a good fit for our podcast, please feel free to reach out and share your thoughts. We're always looking to expand our network with more industry experts and leaders. Share your story. I appreciate everyone's time today. I'm Teresa Moon, and thank you for being with us on Spilling the Tea on GovCon. Have a great day.
Thank you.